I don't know. Some people get nervous when I hear that they hear that they're being recorded. I know. All right, so chapter 1, people and government. This is basically the foundation of everything that we learn in this class. All right, so you need your computer to take notes on. I would encourage you to take your notes on your computer by opening a blank Google Doc. Let's go ahead and open a blank Google Doc. You type those notes in there. All right. I go with the low and slow method. And what that means is I don't go really fast, high speed. Okay. I keep it low because I want to make sure I'm thorough in everything that I talk to you about each and every day. And we go slow so that we can ensure that comprehension among all of you. All right. I'm also a big fan of verbal questioning. So I'm going to ask for various questions as we're going through. Just raise your hand if you know the answer. You want to give some insight on what we're talking about. If you get it wrong, it's okay. I learn a lot more from what I get wrong than what I get right anyways. All right. So please don't be afraid to get something incorrect. I'm not going to make you feel stupid. I promise I won't, because that's not who I am, not what I'm about. All right. So chapter 1. Yeah. On Classroom, she just needs a Google Doc. You don't need Classroom right now. Just a blank Google Doc. All right. Chapter 1, people and government. So again, this is our foundation. So if we're going to start with the foundation, we need to start by asking some essential questions. The first of which is, what is a government? Yes, I do mean what is a government. I do not mean what is government. All right. What is government is a philosophical question, a question that can probably never be answered with a correct answer. What is a government is a statement that can be answered with facts, well-supported facts. Okay. So what do you think a government is? Andrea? People? That's one. Good job. What else is a government? Gotta have people. What else do you have to have? What'd you say? Laws, but what that actually means is power. Yeah, correct. So power, people, and people, power, and a place. All right. So population, territory, and sovereignty. All 3 words that are much longer than they need to be, but words we're definitely going to use in this class. But for the time being, what is a government? People, power, and a place. People, power, and a place. That is what a government is. Number 2, what are the various government systems different? How do they differ? What makes them different? So what kind of systems do we have? Bless you. We have all kinds of different systems, things we're going to get into. Anybody know the names of a few? You do. But go ahead and yell them out. What kind of government do we have here in the United States? Democracy, there's one. But there's even 2 different types of democracy. We have what's called a republic. We have a republic. What that means is we elect other people to make decisions and vote on laws on our behalf. Then there's something called direct democracy. Direct democracy basically eliminates all representation. It would eliminate Congress altogether, and the people would vote on their own laws every single time. All right. Now, Americans are very busy and we have a lot of things going on. So we don't want to be bothered or so, probably more often than that in a direct democracy. Yeah, it could be daily in a direct democracy. So we have a republic, but we also have autocracies. Autocracies are like monarchies, right? We have dictatorships, totalitarian dictatorships. We have oligarchies, which is probably one you haven't heard of, but it's a good one. It's a different kind of dictatorship. It's just a small group of people rather than just one person. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how many know who Bernie Sanders is? Right? Almost all of you should. He was a pretty prominent figure back in the 2016 election. He was running for the primary candidacy for the Democratic Party. He was the only major challenger to Hillary Clinton of the Democratic Party. He actually did very, very well compared to what I thought he was going to be. Usually people with that type of personality and platform get brushed aside, but he really captured people's attentions and had them feeling the burn, for sure. Number 3, how do the various economic systems differ? So there are all kinds of different economic systems as well. And economic systems are, how does our money work? How do we make our money? So in the United States, what kind of economic system do we have? Not a trick question. You've heard the word. Starts with a C. Not checks and balances. Not yet. We're not there quite yet. But keep that in your brain. Store that. It's called capitalism. Capitalism, right? Capitalism is let the market decide. Let the people decide. Let the people who are spending money decide whether or not your product is a good thing. Then the person who produces the best of something is the one who's going to win. Of course, that's theoretical in nature. It's not always the best product that wins. Usually it's the most well-marketed project or product that wins. But you have to produce some sort of product that's going to last for a set amount of time or people won't buy it, right? It's the same reason a lot of people buy 4 or 5 $5 Lightning or micro USB cords from Five Below rather than buying one $20 cord from the manufacturer themselves. It's because people like going and purchasing things. You like having new things. It's a humanistic trait. So if you buy something that's cheap, you're more likely to buy it again. And it gives you that feeling of euphoria of having new things, right? Other people have that euphoric sense of saving money. So when you go to the grocery, right, do a lot of us look for what's the cheapest I can get for this? What's the least I can pay for this? All right. But as you get older and you start to really determine the value of a dollar, you can say, what's the best deal? And what's the cheapest and what's the best deal is not always the same. I'll give you a perfect example. How many of you like spaghetti? Probably everybody, right? All right, so Prego spaghetti sauce. My wife won't eat anything else, so it's got to be Prego. We go to the store. They have the big jar. It's 44 ounces, okay? It was $3.79, I think. Or you could get the small jar, which was on sale for $1.69. Which one do I get? I get the one that costs the least per ounce because that gives me the best deal. So you take the total cost of the jar of spaghetti sauce, you divide it by how many ounces there are, and that gives you the cost per ounce. So in this case, the smaller jar was a better deal. So I bought 4 small jars instead of 2 big jars because it cost me less per ounce. Does that make sense? Okay, so when you go to the grocery store, when you're purchasing something, don't always think what's the cheapest. Maybe take a look at what's the best deal. What's going to last the longest? What's going to give me the most bang for my buck, so to speak? What are you going to get the most out of? All right. The fourth question, this one's a little more direct. This pertains primarily to just the beginning part of this, but there are 2 dudes, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. I don't know about you, Mrs. Dillow, but whenever I see Hobbes, I think of Calvin and Hobbes every time, no matter where I am. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? That's funny. I've never seen it. I haven't. It's on Netflix. So.
This whole group was like lost.
Right.
Through a car crash, and they were on some island and no one knew about. And so he was a John Locke with his theories on how they should run the island.
Oh, so it was sort of like an alliteration. Like he was meant to represent John Locke's ideas.
Anyway, it was one of those.
Right? I think it's an alliteration. Yeah, I think an alliteration is something that represents something else. I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect. I'm not.
I thought alliteration was like the repeat of consonant sounds.
Oh, you're right. It is.
So
It
I think
is.
it's called an illusion.
Like a babbling band of baboons would be an alliteration.
But it was really cool because it helped me learn about John Locke because he followed this philosophy.
Yeah. What am I thinking? I'll think of it. I'll think of the word at some point. But that's cool. I'll have to check that out. But Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, how do they compare to previous governmental theories? All right, so what were governments back in the day, so to speak? In the BC times, all the way up until like, all the way up until like the 17 or 1800s. Who was in power? Kings and queens, right? There was a king, there was a queen. They were in power. They had knights. They had people they sent to war. They took over other kingdoms. It was all about monarchies, right? Pretty easy. Thomas Hobbes and John Locke come around and they change all that. All right, we're going to talk about them. All right, so section 1, key terms and people. Key terms and people, okay. Key terms and people. Now, I don't normally do a separate slide for all of my key terms and people because we can do that within. I can just make it a different color and we're fine, we'll move on. But to start the year off, we're going to do it. All right? So a state. Here's where things could possibly get, I don't want to say a little tricky, but a little different. Could get a little different. And what I mean by that is, in the United States, what's a state? You got 50 options. What do you got, Steven? What name a state? Ohio, perfect. Ohio's a state, right? What else? Texas, New York. What do you got, Adrian? Arkansas. Spelled like Arkansas, right? Arkansas. We have a whole bunch of them, but guess what? None of them are states. Not a single one. I know. Steven gave me a look. It's okay. None of them are states.
That's what we.
Yeah. We are the only place in the world that refers to our territories, which is what they actually are, as states. Now, there's a reason. It's kind of rooted in something that happened, and it's okay. But our states started out as individual states. So what a state is a politically unified people occupying a definite territory. There you go. Make that bigger for you. Is that better? All right. Politically unified people occupying a definite territory. So before we were the United States of America, guess what we were? We were a bunch of states that just happened to be next to each other. We were together. But in order for that to make sense, you've really got to understand actually what a state is. So a state, and the way it's used throughout the rest of the world, means country. All right? So whenever you hear me use the word state in this class, I am talking about what you would think of as a country. Does that make sense? A state is now a country. Get rid of the word country from your vocabulary. Doesn't exist. Okay, there are states, there are territories. Done. All right, so a state, if you want to put country on your definition to help you understand it, that's fine. Just put a country or like a country. All right? The next thing we need to talk about is a nation. Now, here's a bunch of big words, but I'll give it to you a different way to write down so you can have it in a way that might be better understood by you. But an aggregation of persons of the same ethnic family, often speaking the same language or cognate languages. Now, this is the textbook definition of, or well, I shouldn't say textbook. It's not from a textbook, but it's from Webster's Dictionary of Nation. But basically, a nation is a group of like people, or a group of people that have similar interests or are the same in some respects. Now, something very, 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 very important that you understand, a nation is not a state. A nation is not a state. A nation doesn't physically exist at all, right? A nation is an idea. A nation only exists in your head as an idea. That's it. You can't actually go visit a nation anywhere. Yeah.
What exactly does cognate mean? It's the same language or cognate languages?
Cognate languages, it would be like languages that are just minutely different, just barely different, but enough to where you can understand. It would be almost like different dialects of certain languages. So like European English and American English would be cognate languages. If that makes sense.
So like, it might be the difference between like Sicilian and Italian.
Yes. Yeah. So, for example, and if you're having trouble differentiating, which some people do, a nation can be anything. So how many of you have a favorite TV show? How many of you have fandoms? Right? What's yours? Or name one, your favorite one maybe. You have a lot? Okay, just name one. It doesn't have to be your favorite. Does it have a name? That's okay. Pretty Little Liars will work. If you come up with it, let me know. Game of Thrones as well. Yeah. So how many of you have ever watched Pretty Little Liars before? I've never watched it. I heard it's pretty good. That is a nation. The people that watch Pretty Little Liars are a nation. You're an aggregate person of the same ethnic family, speaking the same language, cognate languages. It doesn't have to be languages. It can be anything. It could be watching Pretty Little Liars. That makes you a nation. It could be watching Game of Thrones. That makes you a nation. It could be liking the outdoors. Yep. This is the same idea that allows you to be an American even when you're not in America.
Mostly women, but some men who still support Hillary Clinton, and they're called Pantsuit Nation. So it can be, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It can be anything.
It can literally be any idea you've ever had.
Yeah.
So every single one of you is a part of a nation in this room. And I would say whether you like it or not, but you wouldn't be a part of that nation if you didn't like it, because nations are ideas.
And you would be like, I'm not getting in that nation.
Right. So here's the most relevant way I can explain the difference between a state and a nation. How many of you know why the United States can never declare war on ISIS? It would be one of the worst things that's probably ever happened to the United States if we declared war on ISIS. You raising your hand or just spot in your face? That's what I'm asking you. See if you know. If you don't know, I'll explain it to you. Here's why it's bad. How many of you know where ISIS came from? Why it exists? Probably not. It's a little shady. What do you have, Adrian? It's from Syria. It came from Syria originally.
Okay, so what does ISIS stand for?
It stands for the Islamic State
Oh, that's right.
of Greater Iraq and Syria. ISIS. Yeah, it has to do with soldiers and fighting, not us, not the United States. It happened before we got there. But that's very good. That's a good point. Because when we don't like something, what do? Our first instinct is, oh, we'll just get rid of them, bomb them, right? It can't work like that. Here's why. All right. Syria is a state. They have power, they have people, they have a place to exert their power. Now, the president of Syria, his name is Assad. He's not a very good person. That's putting it very lightly. He uses chemical weapons to kill his citizens. He's a pretty awful dude. All right? But guess what? He has legitimate power. He has a territory, and he has people to rule. But guess what? Those people all of a sudden don't like being bombed by chemical weapons. Imagine that. Right? So these people, they come together and they form a rebel army, sort of like what the United States did in the revolution, right? They form this rebel army and they're going to fight Assad. They're going to go after him. So a civil war starts. And the rebel army from Syria is fighting the Syrian army. So since Syria is a state and the president has power, they use what's called propaganda, right? It's basically fake news to get the people to believe certain things. And the rebels don't really have a chance to use propaganda, right? It's sort of like the Hunger Games, if you've ever seen the Hunger Games. The Capitol, they're a pretty evil place, but they have all the power, so they get to send out their message. The rebels don't. They have to really fight for it. So the United States, wanting to support a democracy whenever possible, decides it's in their best interest to support the rebels. You gotta stay awake for me. All right. You get one warning. I'll give you 2 warnings. Then you have to stand up for the rest of class. All right. So make sure you stay awake. All right. So the United States, being the United States, wanting to support the democracy, we give the rebels some money. We even give them some guns. All right. Sounds great, right? We're going to get another democracy in the Middle East. Way to go, United States. Wrong. What happened? It didn't fail. It succeeded. It did really well. But guess what? The rebels split into 2 groups. One group being the Syrian rebels, the other group being ISIS. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the United States accidentally funded ISIS. We created them on accident. Whoops. Right? My bad. Yeah. Sorry, everybody. But here, this isn't funny. I'm going to use the word funny as an ironic term. But here's what's funny about it. This isn't the first time we've done that. Guess where else we did it? Desert Storm. We accidentally created Al-Qaeda with our money. Whoops. My bad again, right? Here's the difference, and here's why I'm telling you this whole thing. ISIS is not a state. They are a nation. Now, why aren't they a state? They are now. They weren't, but they are now. They have a place. Do they have people to exert the law? They usually use fear to get people to follow the law. We don't do that in the United States under most people's opinions. Some people believe we do. But ISIS uses fear as power, and they have a place, but what are they missing? It's this word right down here. Sovereignty. I'm not going to leave all this up there because then you'll stop listening to me and just pay attention to what's on the board. But I'll leave that up there for you at least. What is that third P word that we talked about in your definition? They have the place. They have the people. What are they missing? Or I'm sorry. They have the place. They have the people. They are missing the power or the sovereignty, right? Because we as the United States do not recognize them as a country, do we? We don't put ISIS on a map. So guess what? If the United States declares war on ISIS, guess what we do? We recognize that they are a place. We recognize that they are a state. And guess what? As soon as we recognize that they're a state, a lot of people tend to follow what the United States does. And ISIS could become a full-fledged state or country. Does anybody know why that's not a good thing? Because they could do whatever they want in that territory because they have the power to do it. The United States can never declare war on ISIS because it would legitimize what they're doing. It wouldn't make it right. It wouldn't make it okay. They would just be now recognized as a state. We don't want to do that. We really, really don't. The third thing here is called a nation state. Now, you've got a 50-50 shot at this question, so I would encourage you to answer this question. Is the United States a nation state? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's a great guess, Taylor. Good job. You're welcome. The United States is a nation state because as what? An American in the American nation. That is correct. If you're born in the United States, you are an American. Being an American has nothing to do with where you live. How many of you knew that? You want to hear something funny? We're going to talk about this later in the year. There's only one type of place in the world that you cannot vote for president. If you're an American citizen and you live abroad, you can still vote for the president. You get to use your last American address that registers you, and then you get to send in a vote for president. You get to vote for president anywhere in the world. You even get to vote for president if you live in the International Space Station in outer space. You literally get to vote for president. Only places in the world you cannot vote for the president are American territories. How weird does that sound, right? Guam, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, none of them are allowed to vote for president. It's because they are already American citizens, but they don't have territories that are represented in Congress. So you'll learn this, but the 23rd Amendment says Washington, D.C. gets to vote for president. Washington, D.C. did not get to vote for president until the 1920s. Check that. 1951, if I'm not mistaken. Literally the place the president lives couldn't elect the president until the 1950s. So I tell you that to tell you what I'm trying to explain is that being an American has nothing to do with where you live. Absolutely nothing. You can be an American and be anywhere. That's why we are a nation state. Because we have this nationality. Now, are all countries nation states? Are all states nation states? Absolutely not. We've already talked about one, Syria, right? They're split in half. Half of them don't identify as part of Assad's Syria. And half of them do. What about Iraq? In Iraq, people primarily identify with what their religion is rather than who their country or state, right, is. So let's say you're somewhere overseas. And I ask you, where are you from? So Alex, if I asked you where you're from and you're in Australia, what are you going to say? If you're from America, visiting Australia, and I ask you where you're from, you're going to say America, right? Or if I asked Adrian, if I asked you, we're overseas somewhere, and I say, tell me about yourself, what are you going to say? You may say your age, your name, and you're going to say, I'm from America. It's part of your identity, who you are. Other people, like in Iraq, would say, I'm a Sunni.
Sunni is a form of Islam.
And when we were first formed, we would have said we're from Massachusetts.
Correct.
We would have said America.
Right. When you're in the United States, that's pretty much the only time you differentiate what territory you live in within the United States. Right? When you go to other countries, they don't tell you what territory they live in. They say, oh, I'm from France. I'm from England. I'm from Wales. I'm from Ireland. Right? So a nation state is something that does happen here in the United States, but that doesn't happen everywhere. Next one we have up here, consensus. And I'm going to throw the next two up there because they consensus isn't too lengthy. Consensus is a general agreement or concord, harmony. All right, so a consensus is, we're good. We've come to an agreement. So if Luke and I come to a consensus that Chevy makes the best truck on the market, we would be agreeing that we think Chevy is the best manufacturer of a vehicle. See, there we go. Better be careful, or you're going to start the next World War. All right, so consensus is just an agreement, and then sovereignty. So this is the word that we use in political science, which is the study of governments, to describe power. All right, so from this point on, I'm going to stop using the word power, and I'm going to replace it with this word, sovereignty. Sovereignty. And sovereignty is power. It's supreme and independent power or authority in government as possessed or claimed by a state or community. So what is sovereignty? It's power within your territory. 4 words. I think that's pretty efficient. 4 words. Sovereignty is power within your territory, and it's complete and total power. It's the same reason that a lot of people laugh, or at least I laughed, when President Trump said he was going to make Mexico pay for a wall. I thought it was pretty funny. I also thought it was a joke at first, but I thought it was pretty funny. Does anybody know why? Why would that be funny? Why would I laugh that a president making a statement in his campaign that he legitimately believed is true? He's what? That's not what I'm referring to right now. All right, so what I'm referring to, it's a good answer though. What I'm referring to is, we're talking about sovereignty, correct? So Donald Trump currently has sovereignty over certain things in the United States. Who has sovereignty in Mexico? Mexico. Mexico has sovereignty in Mexico. So if Donald Trump were to say, I'm going to make Mexico pay for the wall, and Mexico said, no, you're not, guess what? They're not paying for the wall. They're not. They can't. And literally no one can make them. Right? We'll pick up here. I like talking about this, so this is where we'll start tomorrow.